This lesson was recorded in 2020 for my students in Russian and translated with AI so I can make more videos for you. Please support the channel with likes, comments, and subscriptions. New lessons are on Patreon. Hi friends! Today's class isn't the usual one. We'll play with lots of textures, a bunch of colours, including beautifully dirty ones. Let's start with the drawing. Work on a square format or a horizontal rectangle if that's easier. First task, place the window well. It shouldn't sit dead centre, leave some wall space on the left. If you divide the page into thirds, the window's centre will fall close to one of those vertical third lines. Begin by lightly blocking in a rectangle. We'll refine proportions so the panes end up the right size. It doesn't have to be mathematically perfect. Don't stress. If you want extra accuracy, build from the panes. Eyeball width to height. Place the big rectangle and leave a bit more space at the bottom so the sill, the cat's spot, lands near the lower third. Inside that rectangle, find the inner wooden frame. We see the window slightly at an angle, so the thickness, the white reveal of the wall, is more visible at the top and on the right. Mark that depth. Before you commit, check pane proportions. Make sure those little rectangles relate well in height and width. Find at least a couple of panes, say the two on the left, then build the wooden grid around them. If the first big rectangle was a bit off, you can nudge it now. So, in order, I placed a big rectangle by eye, lightly. Inside it, I marked the white wall thickness, the reveal. Then I located the panes and only after that firmed up the wooden frame. My first outer rectangle ended up slightly too wide. I trimmed it. If your proportions drift a little, it's not the end of the world. Depends on your inner perfectionist. And try not to use a ruler. Use this as hand practice. Now let's find the cat. It's small, so proportions matter. Think a head cutlet, then about 2.5 head heights for the body, a bit like a snowman. The lower body shape is a soft heart. That's where the paws finish. Notice where the back starts, roughly from the middle of the head. Even though the cat is tiny, place the eyes and nose precisely. They sit slightly below the midline of the face. More than half the face is forehead. For a guide, sketch a little triangle and a center axis. The nose can shift a touch to the right, but not much. Eyes sit close to the nose, along those triangle lines, just under the lines if you continue them up into the ears. Try to nail the face placement. We'll describe the muzzle shape with shading. Under the cheeks there's shadow. Under the nose it stays light. You can lightly note the cheekbones with pencil. Check the front legs and chest, where they grow from. The chest comes forward a bit beyond the nose. The paws sit almost directly under the chest. The head is turned slightly toward us, so the legs line up almost beneath it. Honestly, the hardest part is the pencil drawing. After that it gets easier and more improvisational. Now, colour. Let's mix the dark for the window glass. We want a fairly dark value. Use blue and violet. You can knock back the blue with a touch of brown, but avoid mixing a greenish mud. Indanthrone blue is great. I like to bias it with a cool blue so the lifted areas keep a bluish tint. You'll see why when we wipe reflections. On my phone and on my computer, the photo read differently. One looked more violet, another more blue. In one version I went violet, in another cooler blue. Both are fine. Choose what you like. Just mix enough dark right away so you don't run out mid-wash. Skip black. With strong pigments, violet, phthalo, indanthrone, ultramarine, a juicy, watery mix will still read deep. Always test swatches on a scrap. Filling the glass. We're going for an even wash, so use plenty of water. Don't aim for 100% perfectly straight edges. There are places where paint hit the glass, little signature smudges. You can suggest them on purpose with slightly uneven strokes. If your wash is too thick and pasty, you'll get streaks. With a wetter mix, you get a smoother field. Next, I take a clean brush, actually slightly tinged with bright blue. Phthalo loves to travel, and that's good. When I lift, I want the reflections to keep a cool tint, not a dull grey. So I lift the curtain reflections and bright spots with that barely blue damp brush. I'm not painting blue lines. I'm lifting with a blue-kissed brush so a whisper of colour remains. If you forgot a white stripe somewhere, you can lift it now. Later, when the glass dries, you can add little scuffs, greenish-grey notes that live in old glass. For the frame, use varied blues. Don't paint everything the same. Areas catching shadow go a touch darker and slightly toward violet on the colour wheel. Barely. You can add a few dirtier notes, but keep it subtle. This window is a great exercise in colour variation. Those small shifts make it feel alive. I'll also use white in this piece, gouache or watercolour white, and I'll say when. You can do it all without white, but for that chalky painted wall look, the plaster and old paint, it helps. Pure paper white reads too clean. Real white paint outside collects dust, wears and catches shadows. A touch of blue in whites helps too. For example, up top I lightly lift and float a little white into damp paint to suggest sun-bleached, chalky paint. If you don't have watercolour white, use gouache thinned like watercolour and glaze with it, even on damp passages. To show bare wood where paint peeled, on damp blue, tap in sienna brown along the edges with tiny dotted motions on the brush tip. Choose warmer ochres for fresher wood, or burnt sienna for darker bits. I also drop in small white touches here and there, still wet in wet. The window is quite small. On A3 it's thin, on A4 it's even smaller. So to avoid over-detailing, defocus your eyes. Paint only the details you can still see when squinting. The rest can be ignored at small scale. There's a vent sash painted white, but it isn't actually white, it's a dirty grey. Don't leave it pure paper white, tint it with a light neutral to suggest settled dust. Those thin ribs on the window edges, 2 factors decide their colour, dirt and shadow. If you're thinking shadow, go cooler. Deepen from blue toward a hint of violet. If you're thinking dirt, lean into greyer, dustier notes like on the vent sash. You can emphasise with a fan brush or any dry, slightly stiff brush, but don't scrub away your base colour. Keep scanning and salt in small browns where needed. Add cooler or greyer shadows where parts tuck under. The lightest blue area is the sill. The darkest blues live up top near the small sash. Enjoy painting this battered frame. The shadow beneath the sill is strong. First, lay a crisp dark edge separating sill from wall, then soften the lower edge with a damp brush into a gentle gradient. Add a touch of rust under the sill. There's also a cast shadow from the cat. Drop a narrow, dark band right under its body. The heart shape of the lower belly stays smooth. Light comes from above, so the shadow edge reads even, while the belly is round. Now, the cat. It plays against the grimy window by being clean. Keep its lights clean. Its shadows are cool, bluish-violet rather than grey. Map the big shadows first and save colour accents for later. Under the chin, along the lower belly, a small one on the left cheek, and that little notch between the paws. Our cat is ginger with spots. Avoid straight orange. A good transparent sienna does the job. If you want a bit more pop, you can nudge it with a touch of orange, but it's not required. When painting shadows, don't outline with harsh lines, especially on A4 where it's tiny. Use short, broken strokes so the fur texture reads. Edges of colour patches should be a bit ragged. Around the eye and ear there's shadow. Leave the inner ear space and later fill it with finer outward strokes. Fur grows out of the ear. Darken the ear edges slightly with a deeper brown so they read. Build the ginger in 2 layers. A flatter first wash, then a second layer of speckles and stripes. He's not just orange, he has pattern. The best thing you can do for the eyes is place them correctly. 2 short slanted dashes along our guideline are enough. If they sit right, the face will read. Mind your stroke direction, always. Even if it gets covered later, it disciplines the hand. Fur, short, broken, in the direction of growth. Window frame, long, even strokes as if you're painting the wood. The wall, more circular, patchy motions like plastering. Deepen the shadow under the chin a touch more. This isn't miniature, but it is precise. Every stroke matters. And don't panic if a stroke goes astray. Don't overwipe. Let the wrong stroke live. Later it often melts into the hole and no one notices. It happens all the time. The white inner wall, the reveal, isn't pure white either. It's a cool, bluish light with some grey spots, darker deeper inside, lighter near the room. Thin your blue well. You can add a breath of neutral, but keep it reading cool. While it's damp, sprinkle in scuffs and tiny dots. Don't try to copy the photo 100%. Let your hand wander. If you dabbed something by accident, leave it. It can be a nice bit of patina. Once the window is ready, it's time for some joyful mischief on the outer wall. Lots of water, lots of freedom. That's why I picked this theme. The shabby wall lets us experiment with flow, different moisture states and mark making. Pick a wall colour. The red-brown is basically red mixed with brown. Avoid flat pre-mixed brick if you can. The wall isn't one flat red. There are violet inclusions, yellow ochre flecks. Try to notice them and suggest them. That greyish, concrete plaster colour. I build it from blue with brown and a touch of yellow. You can also lace in a bit of white for a chalky, trendy tint, or do it all transparent without white. It's your palette. The next neutral grey is different. Also blue-based, then bent with brown. Again, no dead black. Tilt the sheet so washes can run downward and don't pool into blobs. Add colours into the damp wash with the brush tip. If blooms appear, fine. We'll integrate them later. Along the darker maroon strip at the bottom, I use dry brush. Lay the brush on its side. This only works on textured paper. If your paper is very smooth, it may not catch. Practice a bit. Don't get discouraged. Explore different browns, some more yellow, some cooler. Compare mixes with and without white. White makes them opaquer and chalkier. A quick cheat sheet. Greyer, more blue in the mix. Warmer, dark, more yellow, red. Don't be afraid to tilt the page to steer flows. If a corner is pooling, tilt the opposite way, or feed a little clean water up top so paint runs down. As washes settle, some colours fade into each other. That's normal. If a stripe disappears more than you want, you can restate it. Back to dry brush on the lower area. The brush should be quite dry, held almost parallel to the paper. That way it catches the paper's tooth and leaves a broken texture. Try different pressures. There's no single right look. Respond to what's happening on your page and build from there. Opaque, white-tinted mixes are nice because they can cover what's underneath, useful for chips and plaster. Here, I add a bit more of that, a brown with a touch of yellow and some white. Don't forget the shadow under the sill. We already did the crisp edge. Soften the fade with a damp brush into a small gradient. Where you got runs and colour borders, you can now suggest cracks and finer details, sparingly. In fact, I recommend practicing the wall on a separate sheet first. We spent effort on the window. If you're afraid to ruin it, you won't relax. A quick wall study frees your hand. Try a fan brush if you have one, or a battered old synthetic, great for scuffs. Don't gouge the paper. We're after texture, not scratches. Most of all, keep the watercolor effects and highlight them. Don't fight them. Don't try to perfectly copy the reference wall. Show that you've made peace with the medium. Sometimes things won't go as planned. If you can play them off as, I meant to do that, that's gold. A few more scuffs at the top and then know when to stop. That's enough or we'll overwork it. Flick a few splatters on the wall, step back, and enjoy. Thank yourself and your watercolor for the fun you had. Accept the result you got. I'm sure it'll be lovely. See you in the next classes. Send me your work. Bye.